Okay, good morning. It's great to be here. I'm interviewing the newest married couple in the church, Mr. and Mrs. Joe and Anna Waite. It's really exciting to have the conversation. Good morning, both. How are you?
Morning, morning. Yeah, it's very well, thank you. Very well. Enjoying this sunny Sunday morning.
Absolutely. Let's hope that the sun that we've had all week continues through to Sunday morning.
Yeah.
I think most people will know we've recorded this earlier in the week, Joe, but so the sun always shines in Walsall. So there we go. So as I've kind of just said in the introduction, you are probably the newest married couple in the church, and we know you guys pretty well. Some of us know you more than others. So if you want to just start by just telling us a little bit about yourself, Joe, if you want to go first.
Yeah, sure. So for those that don't know me, as David described, Joe, so I am kind of born and bred Walsall-ish. So I grew up in sort of Streatley, Sutton Coldfield way, the posh end, some people call it. But I did go to school in Walsall, and I went to Queen Mary's Secondary School on the Sutton Road. And then I went to university in Exeter, down a long way away, away from home. My parents did have suspicions as to why I was picking university so far away, but I promised them it was just a coincidence. Anyway, I had 4 great years in Exeter, nearly 5, and then I came back to Walsall, and I started a job with Rolls-Royce. So I've been working up in Derby for the past 6 years as an aeronautical engineer. So spend most of my day designing bits of airplane engines or figuring out why they've gone wrong. Not in a, I still fly. I still have confidence. If anyone who's wondering,
are these the bbits that fall off, or the bits that stay on?
Sometimes they fall off, but in a safe way. Most of the time, most of the time it's just designing bits. So aeronautical engineer by trade, and then spend a lot of my spare time eating chocolate. I'm surrounded by Easter eggs at the moment, which is a very happy place for me. Doing baking and sweet treats and all those sorts of things. That's kind of me in a nutshell.
Cool, excellent. And Anna, people will hear your accent is a little bit different to Joe's and to mine and most of the people in Walsall Community Church. So tell us your story then.
So I'm Anna. I'm from Derby, and I grew up in Community Church Derby, which is linked to our church. And I grew up in that church and lived in Derby until I finished school. And then I did various things, traveling and YWAM and various jobs until I decided I wanted to be a children's nurse, and that meant I had to go to university. And the place where I got into university was Walsall. So I moved here in 2016 to go to university, and was here for 3 years and met Joe at that time, and then came back once we got married.
Very, very good. Excellent. So YWAM, that's Youth Without a Mission, yeah, or Youth Without a Mattress, as they're sometimes called. And quite rightly so sometimes with some of the stories I've heard about YWAM. So what were you doing with YWAM? Was it in this country or was it abroad somewhere? What were you up to?
So I went to America to do my they do discipleship training school, so it's like 6 months of sort of Bible study and getting to know God a bit better, and then you go on a mission trip, and I did that like that school, and then they had another school that I did, and then I was on staff for a little bit, so I was actually back and forth from America for about 1.5 years.
Great, fantastic, excellent, very, very good. So tell us about, I'll stay with you, Anna, I think, just for this one. Tell us about how you decided to follow Jesus, and obviously just talk about YWAM anyway, but just tell us a bit more about that, and in terms of how you became a follower of Jesus, but also kind of the difference that's made for your life over the years since you made that decision?
So I was born into church, and so I've always known God. I went to Emmanuel School, which is a primary school which is linked to Community Church Derby. So even in school, I was taught about God, and God was weaved into all of our lessons. And I actually became a Christian in a guy called Gary Gibbs did an assembly where he did a call out if anyone had wanted to pray the prayer and hadn't. I think I was about 6, and he said, if you prayed it for the first time, go and tell your teacher. And I was a really quiet kid, and the fact that I did go and tell my teacher that I prayed it means that it was real for me, because it's the kind of thing I wouldn't have told my teacher about. And so that was the first time that I made a commitment, and I got baptized at Riverside Centre when I was 12. And then, like I said, I went to YWAM. That was like, I finished school, didn't really know what I wanted to do, but I knew I wanted to serve God with my life and to follow God. So I have family friends out in America who said they had this school. So I went out there and did those schools and learned a lot and got to do some mission and things like that, which I hadn't really experienced before. And then I'm not really sure where nursing came from. It just I think I'd thought of it before, and I've always wanted to serve people and help people. And in my head, it when I pictured adult nursing, but I've always had a sort of gift with children. I've worked in served in children's groups at church since I was just not a child myself. And when I put nursing and children together, I found out that you could do children's nursing. I was like, yeah, that's for me. That's what I want to do. So that's when I applied for that at uni. And and God's been in all of that, speaking to me about, what I'm good at and who I am. And I think the main difference that I see, because I've always been a Christian, it's not there's no big moment where it's this is before, this was after. I've always known God, but I think the big difference for me is the peace that I carry when I compare myself to people around me. When I've been at uni and not been Christians, I just have that peace that I know God and that He loves me and that He's got plans for me, and I have that I carry that not everyone has.
Yeah, and it's amazing, isn't it? I mean, I just know, similar to you, really, in terms of when you you're involved in situations or circumstances that quite challenged and quite difficult. That peace, that strength that you have from being a follower of Jesus, that kind of wonder when you see people in similar situations, you wonder how people cope with those situations. They don't have that peace, they don't have that strength, they don't have that security of knowing and following Jesus. So I totally get, what you're saying, really, in terms of knowing that peace. It's an amazing thing to carry and to pass on to people as well, really, in terms of telling people about Jesus and the kind of the source of that peace and the source of hope, and an amazing thing. So fair, that's great. Really, really, really interesting. Come on, Joe, your turn.
So I guess my story starts a bit differently. If you ask my parents, they would say they are Christians. They'd tick the box on the census, and we did used to go to church when I was very small, at church just around the corner from there, where we actually ended up getting married, St. Peter's in Little Aston. But we stopped going, and I was christened in the Church of England, but we stopped going there to church probably when I can remember it, so I think I must have been 3 or 4 when we stopped going. And then after that, I basically didn't really have anything to do with church for quite a long time. And then it was when I was at secondary school, there was a Christian Union run by the students. So Ben Butterfield, who's heavily involved in youth now across the Black Country, was running the Christian Union in our school with a guy called Pete Buckley, who was running the Crescent Baptist Church on the Crescent, and I guess that's where I got kind of drawn in, and I was intrigued as to, I guess it's that kind of, not cliche, but that thing that you kind of, you see people that have something different, and I guess it's that piece that you and Anna were talking about, and I kind of saw that difference, and I saw there was something that this group of people had that I wanted, like that community, that belonging, that peace. And so I started going along to the Christian Union when I was 14, 15, on a Wednesday afternoon, and so started getting involved and doing stuff there. And I didn't really have like a one moment, this is, the penny's dropped, this is it, I'm now a Christian. I'm very much a little bit, I've got a bit of a scientific brain, a thinker. I had to like think them through and observe, and I did that for quite a long time. I went to summer camps with those soul survivors in the summer with those youth groups, but then like made a commitment when I was at one of those when I was 17. Was like when I kind of first remember a moment saying, yeah, I think this is real. And then I think my faith became really, actually how it impacted me and changed my life really became apparent to me when I went to university. So I'd started going to church at St. Matt's before I left for university, through kind of, that's where a lot of the people who were at the Christian Union were going. So I went there because that's where my friends were, where my community was. And when I went to university, and it's a kind of a story, probably a long story for another day, is I ended up in Exeter, not expecting to be there, with no accommodation. So I was lodging in somebody's spare room, kind of with the understanding that I would get some halls of residence accommodation within the first few weeks. That didn't actually come to pass for a few months. So I was there, quite a 40-minute cycle ride from campus, on my own, a bit separated, and I was unsure of what was going on. And I had, and I turned up on the first day of Freshers Week, and I literally remember waking up on the Monday morning of Freshers Week going, nobody knows I'm here, I'm in this person's spare room. I could just not go to Freshers Week, and I decided to, so I then cycled up the hill, and that hill got me quite a bit fitter over the course of 4 years, cycling up and down it in Exeter, for anyone that knows it. I went to the Student Union, didn't really know where I was going or who I might meet, and I went to the cafe in Student Union, got myself some breakfast and sat down, and then behind me I just heard like two people talking, and they were talking about Soul Survivor. Right. And it was just like, oh, okay. And that was like those, and I had several of those moments while in my first year at university where I just realized, and it became so real to me that God would just had his hand on every little aspect of my journey, and was putting people and circumstances in place, and it became really real to me that I knew, and that's where I grew in my understanding of who he was and how much he loved me and cared for me, and about every detail, that I then learned to trust him and say, actually, in those situations where it feels out of control, I've got that deep-rooted joy, not that joy in terms of I'm happy because this is a great situation, but joy which can't be, I feel like there was a phrase that one of the guys in Exeter used to say, I know because I know because I know because I know. It's just, that God's got you. And it thinks that time at university was really formative in me understanding that in those ups and downs of life that God has got me. And that's where it's really made a difference for me. And I think I've seen it in conversations I've had with my parents as well, where they've said, we don't understand how you were so calm in your first term at university when you didn't have accommodation, you didn't know where you were staying, and how you're just you seem to ride the wave, and and for me that's where God's made the biggest difference, and that's where my faith really became a real part of my everyday life.
Okay, that's really good. So for the two of you then, in terms of your faith, how does your faith play out in the workplace, for example? Obviously, both in two very different situations. Obviously, you're in aeronautical engineering, you're a nurse in a children's ward. How would you say your kind of faith plays out on a day-to-day basis?
I think, I guess I'm always looking for ways that I want it to be more involved. It's one of the things that I do come back to often. It's like, it's something that I sometimes struggle with, is getting sucked into the world of work. But I've seen him move in the world of work, and I've had prophetic words about supernatural, like answers, like almost like blueprints to problems. And I've experienced like dreams where I've had the solution to an engineering problem. I've gone in the next day and been like, what about this, guys? And it's like, oh yeah, that solved that problem, like done.
Wow.
And that's really cool, and I want more of that. And it's sometimes frustrating when it doesn't happen. And so I try to pray and bring him into those situations. Also, just conversations with like people in the workplace that you know, because work is work, but the people you work with make it like what it is really. And so those relationships with people, building those relationships with people and getting to know their lives outside of being an aeronautical engineering, and being able to speak into that. And I've been able to share, not very many, and again, I'd love to do more of it, is the either prophetic words or gifts. And there's a really funny story that some people can ask me about a plastic spoon from a cereal packet, where I gave that to somebody at work as a prophetic message, and it absolutely hit home, which is a bit separate faith. So it's kind of, it does come into the work, the prophetic, and the relationships with people. And I think those are the main ways I've seen God move in the workplace for me.
Cool. Very good. What about you, Anna? Have you got any thoughts?
It's a bit different, I guess, in my work, because you're not really allowed to talk about faith explicitly. But in a way, I kind of feel like my job is like expressing my faith, because I'm serving people and I'm taking care of sick people, and I'm being that, I'm bringing that joy and that peace, hopefully, into the workplace. I've only worked at the Manor for a few months, so I've not had a chance to really build relationships there or anything yet, but that would hopefully come in the future, and get to know people there and be able to make it home and build, join into part of that team, and be able to build the team in a way that's positive, and like build good relationships there as well.
Cool. Excellent. Very good. So you told us kind of some of your story in terms of how you became followers of Jesus and university and YWAM, and kind of mixing your two stories together. And you almost got to, well, I suppose, Annie, you got to the point in terms of Walsall, but not necessarily WCC, although I suppose there's an inherent connection because of the Derby Church. But without making an assumption, is the question I suppose I'm asking is for both of you. Again, is how did you find WCC? Why did you decide that you wanted to become part of the family here? And, how did all of that come about?
Mine is partly the Derby connection, but I sort of decided when I moved here, I knew I needed to find a church, and I'd been in YWAM and all these things, and I was like, I'm going to be really open-minded about this. I'm going to try lots of different churches and decide where the best place to go is. And then I arrived at uni, and I a bit similar to Joe, I'd arrived at a different time to everybody else and hadn't really met anyone over the weekend. So I had sort of a bit of a quiet weekend and wasn't really, I was like, oh, this is a bit rubbish. Like, just got here and I had a rubbish weekend. But on the first Sunday, I was like, right, I'll try the church that I'm sort of familiar with. I might see someone I recognise because of the Derby connections. And went to WCC on my first Sunday and never tried anywhere else because I just walked in and felt at home there. I think it was Hayley was the first person came and talked to me straight away, and I was just trying not to cry because I was like I just felt like it was the first person I pretty much spoke to all weekend, and I just felt like I was at home there. So
that's a big thing.
I hear a lot of people try not to cry when they talk to Hayley. So, Hayley, I'm only joking. Oliver will probably edit that out in the interview. Hayley, I'm seriously, you're great, and I'm only joking. I mean, I think you met some WCC people as well at Transform. Didn't you work in the children's team in one of the camps as well?
Yeah, did Transform a few years, and then Paul Gladwell knew I was going to Warsaw for uni, and he was friends with some people in the church, and said, "Oh, come over to the Warsaw camp. I'll introduce you to some of the people in Warsaw." So that was the summer before I started. So I had met a few people there as well, which is one of the reasons I wanted to go to WCC on my first weekend.
And the rest is history, as they say.
Yeah, and I never went anywhere else.
And we're going to come into that history in a few moments. But Joe, what about you? How did you end up? Obviously, you're all kind of like I know you're the posh end of Warsaw, posh boy, but how did you end up over at WCC? I mean, we must have been at Bluecoat when you first turned up, or were you straight in a gold mine?
I did go to the Bluecoat, so I went to Urban Spirit when that was at Bluecoat, and I did go to a WCC or a couple of evening things at WCC before I joined the church. So as I said before, I was at St Matt's before I went to university, and I was at St Matt's when I came back from university for a bit, and while I started my job at Rolls-Royce, and I then went with work, and I moved down to Bristol and was working with work in Bristol for a few months. And I'd started to feel like a little bit I wasn't sure if St Matt's was the right place for me at that time for this season of coming back and starting work. And while I was in Bristol, like I'd started to explore that with God. And when I came back, I explored it further, chatted it through with a few people. And one of the people I talked to, who was really good friends with, were the Harlands, who were around at the time. So I got to know Emily, Alice and Lucy, and then Ben through the Joint Christian Union. So got to be really good friends with them and really close family friends with the Harlands. And I knew Mark then, and he'd said, well, if you're thinking about it, why don't you come and try WCC? We'd love to have you, to come and try it. And I did, and I came and tried WCC. And I think one of the biggest things when I look back on why I was, at the time, it wasn't the right place for me in St Matt's, and what was different about WCC was the church that, it's one of the things I kind of say is, when I went to Exeter and arrived at my church in Exeter, I kind of said, oh, this is quite similar to my church in Warsaw. I think it suits me quite well. And then when I came back from that church, I kind of went, St Matt's doesn't seem anything like the church, but that's because I had changed, I think. And the difference for me was that the church I was at in Exeter there was a lot of family stuff going on. There was lots of families, and I got really close friends with lots of families in Exeter, and a bit of that messiness and, organicness and, reality of a Sunday, which I think is really good to have. And it was just a product of, St Matt's is great and what they do is really good. I was at the Sunday evening service with the young adults, and there weren't the families because of the time it was at, there weren't the young families and things like that. And I know there are more now. And I think I was missing that element of family. And I came to WCC and I immediately just saw it in abundance with the kids running around and, the diversity of the family that we have at WCC. And it was like, yeah, this feels more like home. And so, yeah, just got involved and got stuck in.
And how long ago was that?
That would have been March, April of 2015 that I would have joined WCC, and it was just at the start of the gold mine when I actually started coming regularly on a Sunday morning. I think I've got my year right.
Incredible. 6 years. Doesn't seem like it at all. It's just feels like you've always been around, Joe, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
There we go. Okay, so just the last couple of questions, really. But obviously, we've been through an interesting 12 months. Obviously, as a church, but for individuals as well. Obviously, for you two particularly, they've been 6 months into married life. How's that been? In a lockdown, that must be quite an interesting experience. So I was going to say difficult, and that may be the right or not the wrong word, but just how's that been for you guys, sort of in that first 6 months?
I think it's one of those ones like we haven't done the first 6 months of marriage not in a lockdown, so it's our first 6 months of marriage, and you know, I think it's, as with anything with this lockdown, there's been pros about it. Like, we've had bags of time for us to like build foundation, but
this is a family interview,
and
okay.
there's been downsides of, you know, we haven't been able to go and see our friends and our, you know, and spend time with those people. But it's been an interesting year, like looking back at, you know, just over a year now, and we were deciding what do we do at the start of lockdown, where should we go? We just got engaged, and I ended up going up to Derby and we took turns sleeping on the mattress in the office in Anna's dad's house, whilst, you know, I thought, you know, I took a couple of weeks clothes because I thought, well, this will be 2 or 3 weeks, and then it'll all be done and dusted.
Is that why you had nothing to wear in the hot tub?
Yeah,
That's why that explains it.
Yeah, we had to go to the hot tub. We were fresh out of clothes.
Yeah.
And then I was there till August. We got married with 15 people at our wedding October.
Yeah, but we ended up picking a good time, because other times we wouldn't have been able to get married at all, and we managed to go away on a mini honeymoon. So
it's been a really, I mean, on the whole, we've had a lot of positives in our first 6 months of marriage, and in this period to be really thankful for. I think my lockdown certainly hasn't been as hard as many's, and I'm really aware of that and grateful for the provision God's given me in this period, and all the good things I've had to be thankful for, I think, on the whole.
What's God been sort of saying to you guys then, you know, together as a couple for the first 6 months, but, you know, maybe individually as well, and during this kind of bigger lockdown period of 12 months, but kind of like particularly the last 6 months or so together as a married couple? What's sort of God been saying? How's he been speaking, and what words is he giving you?
I think in the last, like, really recently, I would say God's been talking to me about like trusting him when it seems like when I would be saying he's not answering prayers, or he's not answering them the way that I would expect him to answer them, and to be trusting in the things that you do know about him. Like, I know that God is good, and even though it seemed like he's not answered this prayer, or he's not done this thing that I've asked him for, or in the way that I would expect, that I can trust in the things that I do know about him, and that I know he's good and that he loves me, and just still learning those things.
Cool.
And I think for me, it's been probably over a bit of a longer period of time, is I've been like learning more about experiencing him in different ways. And I think probably, like, I reflect on it and say that, you know, my early like not real Christian life, but my faith journey was, you know, youth, and those moments at Soul Survivor and in youth tents, and those, you know, I absolutely love worship and can't wait to get back to church and worship together, and I absolutely can't wait for those moments again. But God's been reminding me about how he will teach me through other people and through community, and how I don't need to, reminding me and revealing again to me, like I don't need to rely on those mountaintop moments, so to speak, that he will speak to me in a small voice through other people. Like, one of the best things about WC is the community that we have, and the way that we love and encourage each other. And like, through our small groups, through our, you know, before lockdown, like the Sunday evenings communities, the table now, like the community we have. And God's been reminding me, and like in the first 6 months of marriage, like the way that he's taught me about caring through Anna, and the way that she's dedicated and willing to sacrifice, like on a, you know, having no like a rough night's sleep, but going in and willing to, because she wants to care for patients, and like teach me about what really caring looks like. And, you know, those sorts of things, teaching me through other people in the community, not just through a Sunday morning preach or a quiet time on a in the morning. Those are the things, other ways that he will reveal his character to me through the other people in our community who are trying to be Christ-like as well. And that's been really encouraging and a real blessing as well.
Cool. Very, very good. So God has been speaking to you both. Clearly, one of the ways God does speak is through the Bible and scriptures. I don't know if you've had any significant scriptures or kind of like words that that jumped out, even maybe not just in this season, but in the past, really. In terms of bits from the Bible, passages, etc. Just wondering whether you got any to mind that you kind of want to share now. In fact, it'd be good if you read them out first and then individually just explain why that scripture kind of means seeing what God said through it.
I'll go because I think it'll become apparent why this one's become relevant to me in recent sort of times. So let us hold tightly without wavering to the hope we affirm, for God can be trusted to keep his promise. Let us think of ways to motivate one another to acts of love and good works. That's Hebrews 10 verses 23 and 24. And I think it's something that I was trying to reflect on, and as I was thinking about, I'm learning about God through other people and things like that and all of that. And I think it's just like I went to kind of sense check myself and say, is that biblical that happens? And I was like, oh yeah. And I was looking, and like that verse resonated to me as something that WCC has done for me and is doing for me in this community, in this time, in this recent season, through us getting married and all of that the ways that our community have loved and motivated us as well, and how important that is going forward.
Cool. Excellent. Very good. Anna, have you got anything that comes to mind?
The one that I've got is Psalm 112, which has been like a passage that has spoken to me probably since I was applying for university. But when I was thinking about this and like what God's been speaking to me recently, I got it back out again, and it really makes sense for like the things he's sharing with me now as well. So I'm going to read like a couple of verses. I'm just going to read like the first bit for context, and 7 and 8, which are the ones that are really speaking to me at the moment. So it says, praise the Lord, how joyful are those who fear the Lord and delight in obeying his commands. They do not fear bad news. They confidently trust the Lord to care for them. They are confident and fearless and can face their foes triumphantly. And I think the bit that really stands out to me is that they do not fear bad news. And it's not in a way that bad things aren't going to happen. And there's like partly there's no point worrying about them thing, but partly you don't need to fear bad things happening, because we can trust God to care for us. And like in the bad things or the bad news, God has plans that we don't know about, and he's bigger. His plans are bigger than ours, and like I was saying earlier, you can trust in the things you do know about him, that he's good and he loves us.
Brilliant. Really, really good, and a good way to finish, I think. Although I'm going to ask you one more question, just for people who are constantly watching and listening to this. Just give us one or two things that the church can pray for you over the next few months, over the next year or so. What are the things that that you would like to see God do?
I think obviously it's our first few months of marriage have been in lockdown, and we want to really know what, as we come out of lockdown and start to get to see a church family again. I think for us as a couple, that we get to get involved in what God has for us as a couple and individually. So how we serve as a couple in the church, what does our service to God look like as a couple as well as individuals? I think that's a big one. That's the biggest thing for me right now. Is there anything else that you can think of? I mean, I guess you for your...
Yeah, my work not being there that long, so getting settled there again and knowing like all the, just the way things are done and getting to know people and feeling at home there and being able to make an impact there.
Yeah.
Great. Well, that's super. Well, people listening, those are the things that Joe and Anna need your prayer support with. So, when you remember them, pray those things. So, great. Thank you very much. Well, that kind of just draws everything to a close, really. Just to say thank you for taking the time to chat. It's been really interesting.
The beard just for the interview.
Yeah, I did have a trim just for you guys.
Yeah.
It was getting out of hand, so I thought the opportunity of the barbers being open earlier in the week, and knowing I was be doing this, I thought it was a good opportunity to kill two birds with one stone.
Thank you very much, Dave.
Thank you for raising awareness of that. I don't think there's been a meeting, or it doesn't feel like there's been a meeting or a conversation somewhere within WTC where my beard hasn't raised a comment or two. I'm getting used to it now. I don't know what people will do when I shave it off. I have nothing to talk about. There we go. So yeah, Joe, Anna, really do appreciate your time. I hope, I know people will have enjoyed listening to you, and hopefully we'll have learned a lot more about you. And when we are back all together at Goldmine, it'd be good to catch up and for everybody to see you in person and get to know you more. But thank you very much indeed.
Yeah, thanks very much, Dave. See you
You're welcome.
then.
Thanks.
Bye.
See you later.